Without the automobile, the prosperity of the 20s would have been impossible. Within a generation, the dream of owning a car became a reality for 2 out of 3 families. On crowded city streets, the sound of horses' hooves had been replaced by horns and the smells of oil and gasoline. Detroit became a modern mecca, and people came from all over the world to tour the Ford plant and see how cars were made. Henry Ford had revolutionized the industry in 1914 with a moving assembly line that cut Model T production time from 14 hours to 93 minutes. By 1925, a Model T rolled off the line every 10 seconds. Scientific management, new technology, and advertising, our tour guide pointed out, have made the automobile industry the greatest achievement of our time. We were impressed. Nearly 30 million cars crowded the country's roads by the end of the decade. Driving was an adventure, especially beyond the city limits. 98% of our roads were unpaved. Smart drivers always carried chains and a shovel in case they got stuck in the mud. New federal laws provided matching funds to states for road building, and thousands were hired to build them. We spent more money building highways in the 20s than was spent on any other industry.
Through innovative methods of mass production using assembly lines, Henry Ford was able to reduce the cost of cars to a level that most people could afford. Car factories employed thousands of workers, and whole new industries sprang up just to service the automobile. In 1918, only 1 in 13 families owned a car. By 1929, 4 out of 5 families had one. In the same time period, the number of cars on the road increased from 8 million to 23 million. In fact, the industry grew so fast, by 1925, over 10% of all people in the workforce had something to do with the production, sales, services, or fueling of the automobiles. When thinking about busy city life in the 20th century, you probably don't think about traffic and congestion. Congestion problems in core cities and across metropolitan areas in the U.S. have worsened in many places rather than improving, with motor vehicle use doubling between 1970 and 1990. Congestion problems were a major reason for developing some type of traffic control, and by the mid-20th century, extensive highway construction. Prior to 1903, there were no rules for driving in American cities, but traffic controls of some type began to appear after the introduction of mass-produced cars. Initially, a control emphasized the behavior of motorists, pedestrians, and the police. Cleveland had the first permanent installation of a red and green traffic control light in 1914. Detroit added a yellow caution light in 1917. However, getting accustomed to the new signs proved difficult for drivers used to having their own way on the road. In several cases, more experience with traffic problems led to better utilization of the streets and traffic patterns, but the rising use of the automobile created new traffic and safety practices. Of all the important businesses, the most important were filling stations. A filling station was a place where tourists could go for refueling, and eventually garages and service stations were built to aid travelers suffering a breakdown. These were located outside of the cities, and the fuel was provided in cans or other containers. In several respects, the automobile made its impact felt first in rural areas where cars were used for touring and recreation on the weekends, as opposed to replacing existing transit that brought people to and from work in urban areas. Some of the earliest paved roads were landscaped parkways along scenic routes. Although farmers may have resisted the automobile at first, by the 1920s per capita, automobile ownership favored the rural family. Highway construction, also irregular in rural America, nonetheless influenced rural settlement patterns. Already in the post-World War I era, one might find fringe areas on the outskirts of cities that were neither rural nor urban. Settlements along the roads might be populated with farmers, people who lived in the country but worked in the city, and service areas with a variety of roadside businesses catering to automobile traffic.
Thank you very much for watching this film. We would like to thank you very much for watching this film. Jessica, Anna, and Levi would like to thank you very much for watching this film, which was about 1920 automobiles, and we hope you learned very, very much. Thank you for calling down.